It's the International Soccer Preview, and we are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 28, looking at the groups and teams of the 2024 Copa America. This episode is looking at the players of Panama. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 28 on the players of the 2024 Copa America. This episode covers Panama's players. We're doing this mediacast in two parts. Part one here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors to categorize them into definite, likely, possible, and so on. We'll also introduce those players to you with some information about their career history. In part two, we'll come out. Sorry, I got lost in my speech there. Part two is going to come out later when the squad lists are released and the final squad is known. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode will have three sections. Section 1, where we look at some general information on the team. Section 2 is the main part of the media cast. We're going to look at the main candidates in each position, give a little biographical information on them, and assess their likelihood of making the final squad. And finally, in Section 3, we will summarize. We have some concluding business, including a race through of the squad to try to nominate starters. Let's begin then. Section 1 is some general information on the squad. We're going to look at some retirements from the squad. We begin with Luis Tejada. Actually, we're not really reporting on his retirement because he retired after the 2018 World Cup from the team, but sadly reporting his death in January of 2024, just 41 years old, and died of what is suspected to have been a heart attack after playing a pickup game in his hometown. So fond memories of Luis Tejada. Next, Gabriel Torres is retired from the team as of June 2022. So he was not part of the Gold Cup squad in 2023, and the 2021 Gold Cup was Torres' last tournament. So he retired with 104 caps and 24 goals, playing over a period from 2005 to 2022. So Gabriel Torres obviously not going to be part of this squad. Let's move on to our next section. We take a quick look at the club affiliations of Panama to get a sense of their strength. And it'll help here to look at the players with the most caps and the teams they play with. So we have 5 players on the team with 70 caps or more. And we'll look at Anibal Godoy, the captain. He plays for Nashville in USA, and we do have several players playing in the USA, including probably their best player, Adalberto Carrasquilla. I had trouble spitting it out there. Carrasquilla plays for Houston Dynamo in the US, so we have several players playing in the United States. We look at Eric Davis, who is the vice captain with 89 caps, and he plays for Košice. Košice, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, in Slovakia. And we do have players playing in countries like that, in Israel, Slovakia, Saudi Arabia, and so on. So he's a good example of it. Fidel Escobar plays in Saprissa for Costa Rica, and he's representative of several players actually in Costa Rica and in countries like Costa Rica, like Ecuador and Colombia, and like that. Next, we have probably their biggest club affiliation, Michael Murillo in Marseille, but they really don't have many teams in the big many players in the big European leagues. And if they do, it'll be for smaller smaller teams like Atletico Levante in Spain or Académico de Viseu in Portugal. No really big names. Marseille by far the biggest there. Norwich City in England, also relatively big. And finally, we have the old Barcelones in Mexico, and they have a couple of players in the Mexican League. On the B team, we see more of the players playing for the bigger teams in Panama, Sporting San Miguelito, and Independiente, probably two of the biggest teams there. But generally, the A team is playing outside of the country. Okay, that is a look at their club affiliations. Let's go on to recent games. So, as we heard already, they did play the World Cup the Gold Cup in 2023. So we're kind of taking it from there. As far as the positions and formations go, we will actually examine the 2023 Gold Cup. But as far as player participation goes, we look at the 9 games from after there. Actually, they had a game in August of 2023, a friendly with Bolivia, which is not very relevant as it was kind of B team or experimental players. And then they had 4 games of the Nations League group competition. Those were in September and October. And in November, they played the quarterfinals of the Nations League, which doubled as the qualification for this tournament. So 2 more games there in November. After that, just 2 games in March, but they were not friendlies. They were Nations League finals games. So all of those games quite relevant. So we would expect them to put out their A team for the most part in a couple of the Nations League group games. Especially against the weaker teams, they used more experimental players or B team players. And as far as international tournaments go, or regional or international, Panama did make the World Cup in 2018 for the first time. Otherwise, they've made every Gold Cup, which is a competition that runs every 2 years. So I should have the 2019 Gold Cup in there, but it seems to be missing from the list. So basically 4 Gold Cups since 2015. Make that 5. Wow. My math failed me there. 5 Gold Cups since the 2015 one, and including 2023 Gold Cup. So that is a look at the recent games. Let's look at the formation over the formations they used over those games. Actually, it's quite straightforward for Panama, but they do kind of go most of the time with a fairly complex formation. It's a 3-4-2-1 formation, but if you imagine that line of 4 midfielders with the 2 wingers pushed up slightly, you get a 3-2-2-2-1 formation. And actually, that's what Panama goes with most of the time. 80% of the time, or 12 of the 15 games that we're going to look at, they use that formation. In the other 3 games, or 20% of the time, they used 3 different formations, 1 time each. So we won't go into detail on that here. What's perhaps more significant is that it is a 3-man central defense most of the time, 13 of the 15 games, or 87% of the games. So as we go through the squad, we'll talk about the formation. But if you envision that 3-2-2-2-1 formation, with the 3 central defenders, 2 central midfielders, 2 wingers, 2 attacking midfielders, and 1 forward. That's what we have most of the time for Panama. Our last order of business here is looking at the upcoming games, and it's already there on the graphic, actually. That is 2 World Cup qualifiers. So actually, for the CONCACAF region, the qualification for World Cup began at the beginning of June here. Panama was in a fairly easy company there. They played Guyana on June 6th. That probably a more difficult game than the second one on June 19th. June 9th, Montserrat. Montserrat can be tricky in recent years, but those are their two effectively warm-up games for the tournament. But they also have a friendly scheduled for June 16th, playing at home in Panama to Paraguay. Most teams are in the US by that time playing friendlies, but Panama have that game at home. So we'll keep an eye on that, especially in the lineups for those games. And we'll move on to section 2 here, the main part of the mediacast, looking at the candidates. So we begin with the manager, and we have Thomas Christiansen as their manager. He has been there since 2020. Prior to that, he managed Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium and Leeds United in England, a couple of teams in Cyprus, and also assistant manager for a team in the UAE. From 2013, he's been a manager. He was also a player from 1991 to 2006, and for the Spanish national team, just 2 games there in 1996, but didn't participate in any tournaments for Spain. Even though he is Danish born, and of course that's a Danish name, he was eligible through his mother, and actually in his early years played mostly for Spanish teams. His mother forbade him from playing for Real Madrid, so he didn't. He was with Barcelona on their roster. He never played any games for them. Anyway, I'm getting too much into the weeds. Let's do a summary of the managerial position, going back a little further to create a bigger context. And we begin with Hernan Dario Gomez, who was the manager of Panama from 2014 to 18. He led them through four tournaments, including guiding them to the World Cup and leading them through the group stage of that tournament. He stepped down after that in an emotional farewell. You could guess he was fairly beloved after that big success, their first World Cup. And Gomez went on to manage Ecuador. For Panama, 3 managers followed in quick succession. The first was an interim manager. The second one led them to a disappointing quarterfinal stage exit at the hands of Jamaica in the 2019 Gold Cup. And Christiansen came in July of 2020 and actually did even worse than that previous manager in the 2021 Gold Cup. They were knocked out at the group stage there. Anyway, Panama stuck with Christiansen, and it paid off because they got to the final in the 2023 Gold Cup, where they narrowly lost to Mexico. So this will be Thomas Christiansen's third tournament in charge of Panama, and that is the managerial situation. Let's move on to the goalkeepers. We begin by introducing the candidates and their likelihood of making it, and then we'll give a little information on their careers. So we have definite candidate Orlando Mosquera, and then likely candidate Cesar Samudio, and possible candidate Luis Mejia, and also possible Eddie Roberts. And we have one possible but unlikely candidate, Kevin Mosquera, not to be confused with the Orlando Mosquera, our definite candidate. And we'll also mention Jose Guerrera at the seemingly off the squad level. In fact, we do have 3 other candidates who have kind of been in and around the squad, but we're not going to overcomplicate things by mentioning them. Instead, we'll bring them back in if they happen to be selected for the squad, which is very doubtful. Let's look at these candidates. Orlando Mosquera first. Our definite candidate is 29 years old and has 24 caps for Panama since 2017. He plays for Maccabi Tel Aviv in Israel since 2020 and since 2023, and has played in Venezuela, Bolivia, and Turkey. He's been part of the squad since the 2017 Gold Cup, always a backup until the 2023 Gold Cup, where he was the starter. And since that tournament, he has started 6 of the last 9 games, not selected for the first 3 matches after the Gold Cup there in the summer. Orlando Mosquera, though, we consider a definite candidate. Cesar Samudio is 30 years old. He just has 3 caps for the national team since 2023, and he plays for Marathon in Honduras. Prior to that, played in Panama exclusively. He was part of the Gold Cup squad in the 2023, a backup keeper there, and since then, he has started one of their games and subbed in for one. He was on the bench for 6 matches, though, so we consider him a likely candidate for selection. Next, we have Luis Mejia. He's the veteran with the team, been around for a long time, 33 years old and 51 caps since 2009. And he plays for Nacional in Uruguay, and he's played for several teams in Uruguay and teams in Chile and Toulouse B in France. He's been part of tournaments since the 2011 Gold Cup, selected for almost all of the tournaments there, and from about 2019 he was the starter for the team. He was called up for the 2023 Gold Cup there, but that in that tournament became the backup keeper behind Orlando Mosquera there. He is still active, though. He started one of their 9 games since the Gold Cup and was on the bench for 3. However, he was not selected for the last 4 matches, so perhaps making his way off the squad is Luis Mejia. And perhaps taking his place may be the other possible candidate, Eddie Roberts. He's 30 years old, just 1 cap for the national team in 2019. However, he returned to the team after a 5-year absence in March of 2024. So just recently, didn't start either of those 2 games, but was on the bench for both. So perhaps if Mejia is not available, it will be Roberts. Or it could be our possible but unlikely candidate. We're not going to go into detail on the players below the possible level unless there's a reason to. We'll just drop the names and then give more details if they end up being selected. So Kevin Mosquera, possible but unlikely. Jose Guerra, seemingly off the squad. And let's look at a summary of the position, which is quite simple. Orlando Mosquera in all 6 games of the Cup. After the Cup, Mejia got a start, and Samudio also. Those were in September of 2023, kind of ignoring the game in August of 2023 there. And for all of the other games from October onwards, it's been Orlando Mosquera, which is why we think he's a definite candidate and the starter. Okay, moving on to defense, with central defense first. And just to comment on the formation here, it's always a 3-man back line for Panama, except for 1 game. Yes, except for 1 game. No, 2 games where they used a 4-man back line. We'll point that out if it's necessary. But best to envision 3 players being selected as starters here. For candidates, we have central defender Fidel Escobar as a definite candidate. However, quite worryingly for Panama, he is an injury doubt. We also have Andres Andrade, who's actually a left back, but since they're using a 3-man defense, he's often playing on the left side of the central defense. So we've moved him here for the discussion. And we are going to see he does actually appear as a left back too. We also have Jose Cordoba, all 3 of those definite candidates. And then we have possible candidates in Roderick Miller and Edgardo Farina. Seemingly off the squad is Harold Cummings. But he does feature in the narrative. And here too, we have about 5 or 6 players who have some involvement, limited involvement with the squad. But again, we are going to No, actually, in this case, we're going to name them because the injury of Fidel Escobar might necessitate one of them coming back. As you can see, we really only have five candidates, and usually they bring five or six to the Cup. Harold Cummings might be an option, um, but we're going to just list the others by name and then bring them back into the discussion if they're selected. So first, Eduardo Anderson, Reniel Perdomo, Carlos Harvey, and these are generally in order of likelihood. Uh, Jan Carlos Vargas, Richard Peralta, and Manuel Gamboa. Look at this, hey? And Asmahar Ariano. Um, yeah, as I said, for goalkeepers, we have a similar list, not quite as long, but players who have kind of had some involvement. So we will come back to those players if need be. Let's talk about the candidates here. Fidel Escobar, 29 years old with 80 caps and 3 goals for Panama since 2015. And he plays for Saprissa in Costa Rica. He has played for some smaller clubs in Spain and also was out loan to Sporting Lisbon in Portugal, probably his biggest club affiliation there. And he's been part of tournaments since the 2016 Copa America Centenario. All tournaments except the 2021 Gold Cup. Over the recent period, Escobar has started 7 of their 9 games and was on the bench for 1 and not selected for 1. So definitely a starter here, as he was in the 2023 Gold Cup. However, an injury concern. Out with a muscle injuries from late April and an unknown return date. So he's had a couple of months to recover there. So they will definitely be hoping Fidel Escobar will be fit for the tournament. Next, we have Andres Andrade, as we said, a left back moved to this position, and he is 25 years old with 36 caps and 1 goal since 2018, and he's currently with Lask Linz in Austria, actually his second stint with them. He played for a team in Germany as well, and despite being on the squad since 2018, the 2023 World Cup was his first tournament. He was actually selected for the squad, Andres Andrade, selected for the 2021 Gold Cup, but he was injured and had to be removed from the squad. So 2023, his first tournament where he was a starter, and Andrade has started in 8 of their 9 games since the Gold Cup in 2023, and just 1 match he wasn't selected for, probably that August friendly against Bolivia. So Andres Andrade, a definite candidate. The third one, definite candidate, Jose Cordoba, is new to the team. He's just 22 years old. Actually, not as new as I thought. He has 12 caps since 2022, and he plays for Levski Sofia in Bulgaria since 2022, moving there from his team in Panama. Actually, he was loaned out to them since 2021. No tournament experience, though. He was selected for a very large preliminary squad, 60 men selected for the preliminary squad, didn't make the final cut there. However, he's become important since. Jose Cordoba started 8 of their 9 games since the Gold Cup in 2023, and he too not selected for that first friendly. Our possible candidates are Roderick Miller. He's 32 years old, or the first of possible candidates, 32 years old with 40 caps and 2 goals since 2011, and he's playing in Azerbaijan since 2023. It looks like he's collecting passport stamps. He's also played in Iraq and Kazakhstan and Portugal and Mexico. Wow, Roderick Miller has been part of tournaments since the 2013 Gold Cup. Not selected for the World Cup in 2018, though. but otherwise fairly consistently selected for Gold Cups. He returned after a 7-month absence. So basically, from after the Gold Cup in 2023, he was off the squad, but came back in March of 2024 and started one of their remaining 2 games and was on the bench for the other. So a bit on and off the squad there. He also missed the 2015 Gold Cup there, and generally was a substitute when he was involved in tournaments. So that's Roderick Miller. Next, we have Edgardo Farina. He's 23 years old with just 2 caps since 2023. He plays in Panama. And Edgardo Farina didn't start any of their 9 games over this recent period, but was on the bench for 5 and not selected for 4. However, he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches in March 2024, so that brings down his likelihood a little bit. Okay, those are the candidates for central defence. Let's look at the position. In the Gold Cup, it was Harold Cummings in the centre of that 3-man defence in all 6 games. Escobar was on the right side of it in all 6 games, and Andrade was on the left side in all 6 games except game 3, which was a partial B team game. And there we had Roderick Miller stepping in to play the part. After the Cup, Cummings was out of the picture, and Jose Cordoba stepped into his position for all but the first game. So Escobar remained on the right. He played that for all but the last game, and there he was effectively replaced by Miller, who seems to be the backup for this position in general. Andrade remained on the left. But they did play 2 games with just a 2-man central defence. In that case, Andrade became a left defender, just as he is coded. All right. That is central defence. We've actually dealt with pretty much 3 positions there. Let's move on to left backs, which is just 1 position. And that position is usually a right winger, because they use a 3-man defense. So if you envision the 3-2-2-2-1 formation, it's the left back and right back moving up to play the winger. And for Panama, it often is the defender moving up, but sometimes they replace that position with an actual winger. We have a couple of formations that use the left back position as a defensive position too. Okay, let's talk about the candidates. We have Eric Davis as a definite candidate. And we jump all the way down to possible but unlikely and have 2 candidates there, Omar Valencia and Kevin Galvin. Here too, we have 3 players who are seemingly off the squad, but we're not going to put them on the list. Let's go back and look at the candidates. Eric Davis, a fixture in this position, really. He's 33 years old with 87 caps and 5 goals for the national team since 2020. Since 2010, he generally takes their penalties and a lot of the free kicks. Eric Davis plays for Košice in Slovakia since 2024. He played for actually Dunajska Streda for 8 years, but in between those, he was with DC United in USA for a year in 2023. And Davis has been involved in tournaments since the 2011 Gold Cup. Surprisingly, he wasn't selected for the Copa America Centenario in 2016, didn't make the final cut there. But especially since the World Cup in 2018, he's been a starter and become a very important player for them, including as a starter in the Gold Cup in 2023. And Eric Davis started 5 of their 9 games since the Gold Cup there. Was on the bench, but he wasn't selected for 3 matches. Nevertheless, we have him as a definite candidate because it's almost inconceivable that he wouldn't be chosen. We'll take a quick look at our possible but unlikely candidates. Omar Valencia was selected for the 2023 Gold Cup. Called in actually as a replacement there, and Kevin Galvin was selected for the 2019 Gold Cup, but hasn't appeared since then. Yes, but possible but unlikely due to their recent participation record. And let's go back and summarize the situation, or the position over the last while. So Eric Davis in all 6 games of the Gold Cup, except game 3, which was a Parso B team game. And that's where we actually had a more attacking player stepping into the winger role. It was the ubiquitous Joel Barcenas playing in this role in game 3. After the Cup, Davis started the first 4 games. However, interestingly, in the 4th game, that would be the last game in October, they used a 4-2-3-1 formation. So Andre Andrade came out and played the left wing role. What becomes of Eric Davis then? Well, he moved up to play the left attacking midfield role, of course. However, Davis didn't start any of the last 4 games in November or March. In 3 of them, we once again see Barcenas coming in and starting as the left winger, again, the 3-man defense formation. And in the last game, it's a 4-4-2 formation, so we do have a left defender, Andrade, starting that one as well. So not sure what became of Eric Davis there. He wasn't injured. He was not selected, but that could be for personal reasons or something else. As I said, I'm pretty sure Davis will be not only at the Cup, but the starter in the position. Okay, let's go over to the right back position, and we have a likely candidate in Caesar Blackman. And 3 likely candidates. The second likely one is Michael Murillo, and then we have Giovanni Ramos, except he has an injury tag on him. And we won't put our seemingly off the squad player because he's just too far off the squad to put on the list. Let's look at Caesar Blackman. He's 26 years old, 20 caps for Panama since 2019, and he plays in Slovakia also for Slovan Bratislava, probably the biggest club in the country there. But he also played for Dunajska Streda in Slovakia for 5 years. So joining Eric Davis there with that team. Caesar Blackman actually was not part of any tournament, made the preliminary squad for the 2019 Gold Cup, but not selected, and not selected for the 2021. So 2023 was Blackman's first tournament, and he was only started game 3, the B team game there, and then got an injury which ended his tournament. So not a great tournament for him. He had since started 3 of their 9 games, has Caesar Blackman, and 3 of their 9 games he started, subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3. So we have him as a likely candidate because he's been regularly called up recently, and hopefully he'll have a more successful tournament experience than he's had up till now. Next, the likely candidate is Michael Murillo, and he's 28 years old with 70 caps and 8 goals since 2016. He plays for Marseille in France. He was with Anderlecht in Belgium prior to that, and he's been part of squad since the 2017 Gold Cup. Not selected actually for the Gold Cup in 2021. He was on the preliminary squad. He made the cut to 25 and then didn't make the final cut, Michael Murillo. But he did start and finish games 1 and 2 in the Gold Cup in 2023. But then he had an injury which ended his tournament as well. So Michael Murillo returned after that injury absence. He returned in October 2023 and started 4 of their remaining 6 games. but he was injured again for the last 2 matches there. He has recovered from that injury, though, and it's not on the injury list now. All in all, that adds up to Michael Murillo being a likely candidate, especially since our next candidate, also likely, is on the injury list, and actually he will be out. It's Giovanni Ramos, the 27-year-old, who has 14 caps since 2020. He plays in Panama, but he has played in Venezuela also, and has never been selected for a squad. Made the preliminary squad for the last 2 Gold Cups, but not any tournament experience. And well, I won't go into detail on his participation because Giovanni Ramos is out with a ligament injury since mid-May and not expected back until July 24th. But suffice to say, we did have him as a likely candidate, not considering his injury. Okay, so we might as well put him here down on the injured list. I have that category, but never use it, but I should. Okay, let's summarize the right backs here. At first, the position was played by right backs. As we see, this is often a right wing position. At first, it was played by right defenders. Murillo in the first 2 games of the Cup, and then Blackman in the partial B team game 3. And we saw that the left attacking player Bárcenas played as the left winger in game 3 of the Gold Cup. Well, after game 3, he moved over to the right side and played the last 3 games there as a right winger. After the Cup, Blackman and Murillo shared the role, almost an equal number of games. Murillo played 4 in a row, though, in October and November. Blackman getting his games in September and the first game in March. However, the second game in March was started by the newcomer Giovanni Ramos. Or not a newcomer, but he had come back into the squad. However, as we know, Ramos is out injured now, so it'll just be Blackman and Murillo probably. Let's move on upfield to the midfielders, and we begin with defensive midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Adalberto Carrasquilla, and another definite candidate in Anibal Godoy, who is the captain of the team. We have a likely candidate in Abdiel Ayarza. And then seemingly off the squad, Giovanni Welsh. I have a little bit to say about him, so we will put him on the list. Again, we're not ignoring those players, just it depends how close they have been to the national team. Okay, let's talk about these players. Adalberto Carrasquilla, 25 years old, with 55 caps and 2 goals since 2018, and plays for Houston Dynamo in 2022. Reportedly has had a very good season with them too. Played for Cartagena in Spain from 2020 to 22, and in Panama before that. Really, he's been on the team since 2018, but he didn't make an impression really until the 2023 Gold Cup. He was selected for the preliminary squad for the World Cup, actually, but didn't make the final cut. Not selected even for the preliminary squad for the 2019 Gold Cup. And was a starter in the 2021 Gold Cup, though I must confess he didn't dent my consciousness that much, but he certainly made a tremendous impression on the 2023 Gold Cup, where he was clearly their best player. And I believe he won the Golden Ball Award for Best Player of the tournament, quite deservedly there. And since the Gold Cup, he has started 7 of their 9 games, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 1. So Adalberto Carrasquilla, a definite candidate here, as is captain Anibal Godoy, and he is a real veteran with the squad, 34 years old, with 138 caps and 4 goals. And he plays for Nashville in the USA. He's played for Nashville since 2020. He's also played in Hungary and on loan in Argentina. Godoy has been part of the squad since the 2011 Gold Cup, participated in every tournament, but a bit of a gap after the World Cup in 2018. He was injured for both the 2019 and the 2021 Gold Cups, but he returned for the 2023 edition where he started. He was a starter. Since then, he started 5 of their 7 games, Annabelle Godoy, and he was on the bench for 1, but not selected for 3 matches. We nevertheless have him as a definite candidate. Since he is active playing, it would be inconceivable for him not to be selected, unless he retired or something, which might happen because he's 34 years old. Anyway, let's go with the next candidate. And I think I forgot to put him on the list, actually. It's Christian Martinez. He's also a definite candidate. So behind Godoy there. And Christian Martinez is 27 years old. He has 38 caps for the national team, no goals. He's been with Panama since 2016. Currently actually playing back in Panama with Plaza Amador, his second stint with them. But he has been in Saudi Arabia and in Spain and Venezuela as well. He has had trouble getting onto squad despite being with the team since 2016. He has not made a tournament. He's been on the preliminary squad for 3 of the 4 tournaments, but never making it until the 2023 Gold Cup, where he was a B team player, starting just in the B team game there. And Christian Martinez has started 4 of their games since the Gold Cup. He subbed in for 4 as well and was on the bench for 1 other. So in terms of selection, he's a definite candidate. In terms of being a starter, seems to be getting a few more starts recently, but generally more of a substitute. Next, we have likely candidate Abdiel Ayarza. He's 31 years old and has 25 caps and 4 goals for Panama since 2019. He plays for Cienciano in Peru since 2024. He was with Cusco in Peru prior to that, after leaving Panama in 2022. And he was selected for the Gold Cup in 2021, but not for the Gold Cup in 2023. He was just on the preliminary squad there. And Ayarza returned after a 7-month absence in October of 2023, didn't start any of their remaining 6 games, but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 3. So the consistency of his recent selection has us putting him as a likely candidate here. Although almost certainly not a starter. We're going to introduce the seemingly off the squad Giovanni Welsh. Not introduce him, but point out that he was selected for the 2023 Gold Cup. However, he hasn't started any of their games. He was, by the way, a substitute in the Gold Cup. Started game 3 there. And subbed into a couple of games. Hasn't started any games in the recent period, and subbed in for 2 and was not selected for 7 matches, including the last 6. So is seemingly off the squad. Giovanni Welsh. And we have a couple of other players also, but they're even further from the squad than Welsh is, so we won't mention them. Actually, for central midfielders, we have no candidates. We had 3 definite and 1 likely defensive midfielder, but they only have coded as a central midfielder Miguel Camargo here. Who is seemingly off the squad as well. He's a very experienced player for Panama, playing in many tournaments up till the 2021 Gold Cup. Didn't make the World Cup squad, but did play in tournaments after that. But he has not appeared, Camargo, since March of 2023. So seemingly off the squad there. We'll talk more about him if he makes it back onto the squad, and indeed talk more about the two players that we haven't even added to the list here. But now that we've looked at central and defensive midfield candidates, we can talk about the position. It's blessedly a two-man position in all formations that Panama uses. So we don't have to go into details of midfield formations. We're just looking for two players here. And even that's fairly simple. In the Gold Cup, it was Godoy and Carrasquilla in 5 of the 6 games. For the partial B team game, the pairing was changed. It was right midfield. No, it was Christian Martinez here. He's actually coded as a right midfielder, but we've moved him here. And Giovanni Welsh, the B team players who played game 3. So that gave us a look at the backup players there. Godoy and Carrasquilla continued after the Cup as the central pairing, but Godoy was absent for 3 games in the fall of 2023, so Christian Martinez deputized. So fairly simple there, although given that there's 2 positions, they are a little thin in the midfield. With just 4 candidates there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Welsh come back or to see new players brought into this position, perhaps Camargo return. Wouldn't be a shocker either. But other candidates may exist in the left and right midfielders here. They don't use the position in the formation, but we do have candidates coded this way, so we'll take a look at them, and maybe they could be potential backup players for the central midfield. First, we have two possible candidates at the left midfield. In the left midfield, the first is Jose Murillo, the second is Eduardo Guerrero, and we also have seemingly off the squad Ricardo Avila. So I'll talk a little bit about him. Jose Murillo is 29 years old with 16 caps and 1 goal for Panama, and he plays for Monagas in Venezuela since 2024. He's also played in Guatemala, but has mostly been based in Panama. He's never made it to a cup, but he has been on the preliminary rosters for the last 2 cups. And he returned after a 10-month absence in August of 2023 and started 2 of their remaining 9 games, as well as subbing in for 1. But he's been largely off the squad since then, including the last 4 matches. Eduardo Guerrero is 24 years old with 8 caps since 2017. So that in itself is an indication that he's struggled to make it into the squad. He plays for Zorya Luhansk in Ukraine and has also played in Israel as well, and also has not made it to any tournament, but has made it to preliminary squads for the last 2 tournaments, just like Jose Murillo there. And he returned after a year-long absence. He was injured for the second part of that absence. He returned in September of 2023, started 1 game, subbed in for 1, and was on the bench for 2, but not selected for 4 matches, including the last 2. So actually, we'll put him ahead of Jose Murillo because he seemed a little bit more likely than Murillo. Finally, we have Ricardo Avila. He's seemingly off the squad, last appearing in March 2023. I just want to put his name in, A, because it looks like we're going to need a couple of other candidates for selection, and B, because he was part of the World Cup squad in 2018. Has never made it to any tournaments otherwise, though, and he was on the preliminary squad for the 2023 Gold Cup, and as I said, did play in March of 2023, so not as far as off the squad as all that. Anyway, as we said, they don't use the position, so we don't have any starters here. On the right midfield, we also have a couple of candidates to look at, and we'll just go through them quickly. Cesar Yanis is possible but unlikely. Omar Brown, seemingly off the squad, as is Victor Mendez. And then again, we have a couple of other players who don't even make the list here. Cesar Yanis was part of the 2021 and 23 Gold Cups, just a substitute in both of those. However, he was subbed in for 2 games and on the bench for 4. But not selected for the last 2 matches. Well, that's a bit harsh. I'm going to change him to being a possible candidate here. He has, as I say, been involved with 6 of the games here. Just the last 2 matches he wasn't involved for. So Cesar Yanis moved up to possible. Omar Brown, part of the 2019 Gold Cup squad and selected for the preliminary squad in 2023, but not playing since March of 2023. So seemingly off the squad, but possible, not out of the question, I mean. Also Victor Mendez, part of the preliminary squad for the 2023 Gold Cup and last appeared in June of 2023. So also not out of the question. However, no one is a starter there because they don't use the position. So we're going to move on up to the attacking midfield part of the field. And actually, we've created a new category for Edgar Yol Barcenas here, a versatile midfield attacker. And that's because it's hard to nail him down to one position, and he really plays all over the offense there. So we're going to deal with him as a versatile attacking midfielder on his own. Actually, he's not a definite candidate, surprisingly, just at the likely level. Let's take a look at him. He's 30 years old with 84 caps for the national team, only 9 goals, which is a bit low given the positions he plays. Barcenas has been with Panama since 2014 and plays for Mazatlan in Mexico. He was with Tijuana in Mexico for 4 years before that and has been out on loan in Spain. Part of tournament since the 2017 Gold Cup, has actually never failed to participate in a tournament since, and was a starter in the Gold Cup in 2023. He also named to the team of the tournament there, and since the Gold Cup he started 4 of their 9 games, Barcenas, and has started 4. It's got to be more than that. Anyway, he subbed in for 1 and not selected for 4 others, including the last match. Well, I'm going to go with that, but seems to me he's on the field a bit more than that. But anyway, we have him as a likely candidate. The participation alone would put him just at the possible level, but for other reasons, we think he'll be more likely. Actually, I personally think he'll be a definite member of the squad. Anyway, that is Yol Barcenas, and his name is going to come up over and over as we go forward. Let's look at the left attacking role. So this position is kind of our own invention, and it includes left winger, left attacking midfielder, and left forward, depending on the formation they use. For Panama in the 3-2-2-2-1, it's almost always a left attacking midfield role. And the candidates here are Ismael Diaz. He's actually coded as a forward, but we put him here because this is where he has been playing the most. Actually, towards the end of the period, he moved back to being a forward, but we'll deal with him here. Edgar Yol Barcenas is technically coded as a left winger / right winger, but we've moved him to the versatile midfield position and dealt with him above. Jose Luis Rodriguez then is our next candidate at the likely level. And we have one possible candidate, Alberto Quintero, at the possible level. One at the possible but unlikely, Richard Phillips, also sometimes listed as Richard Hines. And we have Freddie Gondola seemingly off the squad. But since he played in the Gold Cup in 2023, we want to add him to the list. We have two players that we're not adding to the list as well. Let's take a look at the candidates. So Ismael Diaz is 27 years old, 39 caps and 9 goals since 2014, and he plays in Chile for Universidad Católica, and he has been out. He has played for a small team in Portugal and in Uruguay as well. On the squad since the 2017 Gold Cup, but not selected for the 2019 and 2021 editions. He was actually part of the World Cup squad in 2018 as well, but really made his name in the 2023 Gold Cup. The first tournament he was a starter in, and made a big impression there. Ismael Diaz, he has started 6 of their 9 games since the Gold Cup, and he subbed in for 2 and not selected for 1 other. So a definite candidate here. Let's move on to Jose Luis Rodriguez, and he's 25 years old with 46 caps and 4 goals since 2018. He plays in Portugal and has also played in Spain and Belgium, and part of the World Cup 2018 squad. That was his first tournament, and selected for every tournament since, except the 2023 Gold Cup, for which he was injured. A torn knee ligament injury there prevented him. He returned from that injury in October of 2023 and started 5 of their remaining 6 games and subbed in for the others. So right back into the squad for Jose Luis Rodriguez, and a likely candidate here. Next is Cahizo Lenis. He's 24 years old, just 4 caps for the team, but 2 goals, so scoring in 50% of his games so far since 2023 with Panama, and he plays for Jaguars in Colombia since 2023, and he got his first appearance in that friendly with Bolivia in August of 2023, so their first game after the Gold Cup, and he started 1 of their remaining 9 games. Subbed in for 3, but not selected for 5. So Cahizo Lenis kind of on the outskirts of the squad so far, but still fairly young. Ricardo Phillips, or Ricardo Hines, we'll just leave as a name on the list. He made the preliminary squad for the 2023 Gold Cup and has been involved since, but not that much. Freddie Gondola also now seemingly off the squad because he hasn't appeared since the Gold Cup, but we put him on the list because he was selected for the Gold Cup in 2023. Let's summarize the position. In the Gold Cup, this was actually one of the kind of unsettled position. It was 3 different players. Ismael Diaz was the starter. Joel Bassanes was there in game 2, and Freddie Gondola in game 3. However, Ismael Diaz took the position in game 4, I should say, and scored a hat-trick in 9 minutes. Wow. So that pretty much secured the position as his own for the rest of the Cup and made a strong impression. Anyway, despite that success, he only remained in the position for the first 2 games in September, but then he did move to another position, which we'll get to a bit later. After Ismael Diaz left, it was Barcenas playing, and then we saw left back Eric David, surprisingly, playing in the position one time. But when Jose Luis Rodriguez returned from his injury, from his absence, he played the position for the last 4 games. So now he seems ensconced in the position. But be interesting to look at the warm-up games to see if he is still there. Moving over to right attackers, we have a definite candidate in Jose Fajardo, and a likely candidate in Alberto Quintero. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my graphics here. Okay. And a possible candidate in Ivan Anderson. We have two players who are, yes, off the squad. We will actually mention them. George Serrano, or Jorge Serrano, and Jorge Mendes, seemingly off the squad, both of them. And we won't say more than they both appeared in 2023. Okay, let's go back and look at the main candidates, though. Jose Fajardo is 30 years old with 45 caps and 8 goals for Panama since 2017. He plays for Universidad Católica in Chile since 2024, DC United in the USA before that. He's also played in Peru and Ecuador and Colombia, as well as Saudi Arabia there. He was on loan to them. And his first tournament for Fajardo was the 2019 Gold Cup, and he's participated in all the tournaments since. And since the 2023 Gold Cup, where he was a starter, he started 7 of their 9 games and subbed in for 1. So Jose Fajardo, a definite candidate here. Alberto Quintero, we've actually moved to the right side here. He's coded primarily as a left winger. And he has, Quintero's a veteran for the team with 36 caps. 36 years old, 138 caps and 7 goals since 2007. And he's been part of squad since the 2011 Gold Cup. He was not selected for the 2017 Gold Cup and was injured for the 2018 World Cup, unfortunately for him, but part of squads otherwise, including the Gold Cup in 2023, where he was a substitute in game 1, but actually gained a starting position after that. However, in the recent period, Quintero has only started 1 of their 9 games, and he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 4, but not selected for 3 matches. They were the first 3 matches, though, so he's been selected regularly ever since, and Alberto Quintero is a likely candidate here. Likely not a starter, though. Ivan Anderson is 26 years old. He has 11 caps and 1 goal for Panama since 2019 and plays for Fortaleza in Brazil since 2024. He was in Venezuela before that. And the Gold Cup in 2023 was his first tournament. Actually, he wasn't selected initially, but called in to replace an injured player for that tournament. Since then, Anderson has started 1 of their 9 games, as well as subbing in for 2 and on the bench for 1. But 5 of the 9 matches he was not selected for. So just a possible candidate here. And we looked at Serrano and Mendes as seemingly off the squad. So let's summarize the position now. And the right attack, what we said of the left attack will be the same as the right. So right attacking midfielder in the 3-2-2-2-1 formation, and actually the same pattern as in the Gold Cup as on the left side. Fajardo started game 1 and then returned to it for the last 3 games, just like Diaz on the left side. In between, Quintero started game 2, and Ismael Diaz actually switched sides to play on the right in game 3. That was the B team game. After the cup, it was always Fajardo, and only on 2 occasions when he wasn't in the right attacking position, he was playing as a forward. Rodrigo's actually played the first game on his return on the right before switching over to the left, Rodriguez. And in the last game in the 4-4-2 formation, Anderson, who's coded as a right defender, played the role as the attacking winger. Okay, so that is the right attacking position, and we move on to the central attacking position, which is not used in their 4-2-2, sorry, their 3-2-2-2-1 formation. So we don't have any players here who are starters. We just have a couple of names to drop, and that is Angel Aurelian as a possible but unlikely candidate, and Uziel Maltez as a seemingly off the squad player who last appeared in March of 2023. But we won't say more than that about them unless they are selected for the squad. So basically no central attacking position in their formation. Let's move up to the forward position. We do have one player as a secondary striker. We want to put the name on the list. It's Thomas Rodriguez as a seemingly off the squad player. And again, we won't add details unless he's selected for the squad. Let's go on to the forwards then, and we have Jose Fajardo and Ismael Diaz actually coded as forwards. We've moved them around according to where they've been playing. So that leaves our first candidate as a likely candidate, Cecilio Waterman. He's got an injury tag on him, which we'll talk about shortly. He's 33 years old, Waterman, with 39 caps and 10 goals since 2010. And he plays for Alianza Lima in Peru since 2024. He's actually been with a couple of clubs in Peru, as well as playing in Uruguay also. Waterman was part of the Gold Cup way back in 2013, but was off the team for a 6-year period. And the next tournament he played was the 2023 Gold Cup, where he was a substitute. So he did start game 3, the partial B team game there. Over the recent period, Waterman has started 3 of their 9 games, also subbed in for 4. So just 2 matches that he wasn't selected for. So we considered Waterman a likely candidate. That is at least until we saw him listed with a muscle injury and an unknown return date. The odd thing, though, about this is that he was out for his club from late April to late May with this injury, but he actually came back for the last game of the season and played 65 minutes. And nevertheless, he still is listed as being injured. So we're not really sure of his status. Perhaps we can update it in part 2 if there is an update. Sorry, we should have listed all the candidates before talking about Waterman, because we also have a likely candidate in Alfredo Stevens. We also want to list 2 candidates. We actually have several candidates who are seemingly off the squad, either for the short term or for the long term, but we're just going to list 2 of them. The first is Azarias Londono. He seems to be off the squad. He was selected for the Gold Cup in 2023, but has not appeared since. And also Rolando Blackburn, who was kind of brought back in from the cold in August 2023 to start that friendly with Bolivia. But he survived on the squad after that, subbing in for 1 and on the bench for 1, but then not selected for the last 6 matches. So both of these with an outside chance of making the squad, especially given the injury if Cecilio Waterman is left off the squad. Let's go back to where we were. We gave details on Cecilio Waterman, but not Alfredo Stevens, the other likely candidate. Stevens is 29 years old, 28 caps and 1 goal. That's a pretty low count for a player coded as a forward. Alfredo Stevens has been with Panama since 2012, and he plays in Israel now. He's played all over the place in Ecuador and Venezuela and Portugal and Slovakia, yet another team, by the way, or another player with Dunaska Streda in Slovakia, so they seem to have some sort of a relationship with them. Alfredo Stevens played in the 2015 Gold Cup, but in no tournament since did he play. He was on a couple of preliminary squads. In the recent period since the 2023 Gold Cup, he started none of their games, but he was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 3. And not selected, but those were the first 3 matches. So he's been called up regularly since. So perhaps we'll make it to his first tournament since the 2015 Gold Cup as Alfredo Stevens. Okay, and we talked a bit about Londono and Blackburn, and we'll leave it at that for players who are off the squad, and we'll go to summarizing the position. Actually, we didn't talk about the position in theory, so I'll do that first. It's a single forward all the time for Panama, except in the last game in March 2024. They used a 4-4-2 formation, so that was the only time that there was a double forward, 2 players in the position. Let's summarize who's been filling the position then. In the Gold Cup, it was confused at first. 3 different players in the first 3 games. We've met them already. It was the ubiquitous Barcenas in the first and Fajardo in the second. And then we have Waterman, who was kind of the backup forward there, playing in game 3, the partial B team game. It's actually Alberto Quintero, who we introduced as a right midfielder. Maybe we should have introduced him here, since most of his starts in this period were as a forward. Actually, we're not counting the Gold Cup in terms of their participation. But Quintero was the forward for all 3 games after the group stage in the Gold Cup. But it remained very unsettled after that. In fact, 5 different players started the first 5 games. Again, we see some of the names that we've seen above, Barcenas, Fajardo, and Quintero, except instead of Barcenas, and Waterman, I should say. Instead of Barcenas, though, it was Guerrero, the midfielder Guerrero, starting. So, as I say, very confused. The 5th player to start was Ismael Diaz, and he was moving out of his role as a left attacker into the centre forward, and he held the position for 3 games. In the last game, though, it was a pairing of Waterman and Fajardo. So things fairly unsettled in this position of forward. So we'll see what they do in the warm-up games. That may provide a hint of what they're going to do in the Cup. Okay, we move on to section 3, and I'll just go directly to our review of the starters. So I'm going to pause to set that up. Okay, we are back, and at the top of the list, we'll start with manager Thomas Christensen. No real threat of him being replaced before the tournament, so we'll say he is a definite candidate or a definite starter. Let's go on to goalkeepers. We are confident enough to nominate Orlando Mosquera as the starter here, even though he started just 6 of their last 9 games. He starts the important ones, and we have for defenders Fidel Escobar. He is an injury risk, but I am going to say he's a starter, and it will be a big loss if he is not available for the squad. We do have the 3-man central defense, and it has quite regularly been Escobar on one side and Andrade on the other. If they go with the 2-man defense, Andrade plays as a left back, at least recently. So we're going to nominate him as a starter. And Jose Cordoba has taken over from Harold Cummings in the Gold Cup as a consistent central defender. So all 3 of those we think are going to be the starters. We move over to the left back. And again, Eric Davies has only started half the games over the recent period. And yet, I think he will be the starter. There didn't seem to be any problem with him as in terms of injury or anything like that. So I'm going to be bold and nominate them. But we do have two potentially left wingers, or sorry, left backs nominated with him and Andres Andrade. Uh, I still think they'll make it work. On the right back side, a little less clear. We basically have a rotation between Blackman and Murillo, and I wonder if we'll have a rotation in the cup as well. So hard to decide between them, but I think it'll be one or the other, or well, that's not being very bold, is it? Or a rotation. I'm going to predict the rotation because that sounds a bit more intelligent or predictive. Let's go on to central midfield. Actually, all the candidates they have are coded as defensive midfielders, but there really is no difference between them. So Adalberto Carrasquilla and Annabel Godoy, the consistent pairing in the midfield. So we definitely think both of those will be the starters. After that, we go up to the left attacking end of the field. No, we have Edgar Yol Barcenas, ubiquitous as he is, hasn't actually started as much as it would seem. So we had him as a likely candidate in terms of participation. Just started 4 of their 9 games, but wow, he seems to be on the field somewhere every game. So I'm going to put him as a blue, kind of a likely starter there. I just think he will. Ismael Diaz was the left attacker in the Gold Cup and a little bit beyond, and then later moved to the forward position. In all, he started 6 of their 9 games. I'm not as confident that he'll be a starter, though, so I'm just going to put him in blue. It's a little bit of a doubtful, a little bit of doubt in there for me with Ismael Diaz. On the right side, Fajardo we have much more confidence in as a starter, so we highlight him in the in green there. And probably the least settled position on the field is forwards, and even at that, the backup forward Cecilio Waterman seems to be injured. As far as starting forwards, it looks like it's just going to be one of the players filling in from the position they usually play in. So it could be Fajardo or Ismael Diaz, probably the 2 most likely candidates, possibly Barcenas as the forward too. And I wouldn't be surprised to see some new players brought in, especially if Waterman's injured, because that would leave them with just the one likely candidate, Alfredo Stevens. We also might have Quintero as the starting forward. But no players actually have really seized the position. All right, that is our run through the squad, and we move on to injuries. And we have a couple. Most worryingly, the injury situation of Fidel Escobar. So that's an unknown situation. He's out with a muscle injury from late April. So they'll certainly be hoping that he will recover. That gives him a couple of months to recover. But the tag says an unknown return date. So that would be a huge loss. Not as serious a loss would be forward Cecilio Waterman. We did have him as a likely candidate, and a bit of an odd situation, which we described in section 2, of him being out with this injury, coming back for the last game of the season and playing, and yet still being listed with the same injury. So again, hopefully we can get some clarification on that for part 2. Otherwise, we're finished with our business for now. That's all we can do. we'll have to wait until the final squads are published until we can move on. So we'll finish by previewing part 2, where we will we will point out any notable non-selections, especially players in the likely or definite category who are not selected, and any surprise inclusions, including new players. We'll also update those injuries if we have any more new information on them. That's it for now, and we hope you join us for part 2. We would like to thank Paul Udin and Pixabay for the wonderful background music accompanying this mediacast. The piece is called Victory Epic Music.